Welcome to How We Grow, an essential playbook to grow and scale your vacation rental business with advice and insights from the best in the biz, with your host, Lynell Gordon. Welcome to the Vacation Rental Show. I am excited today. We have John on in the studio, and John is, I'm going to dumb it down a little bit because John is a tech guru. He knows a lot about technologies in the industry. He's worked with over 15 property management systems personally himself that he's installed for his own property management company, which I was really impressed with. But he's a lot more than that. He's a brilliant guy with a huge Ivy League background from Harvard. He's also been an adjunct professor at Cornell, at Harvard, and other places. He's a really smart guy. So guys, I wanted to bring him on today. And John, thank you for coming.
Thanks, Lynell. It's great to be on your show, and I'm really looking forward to the conversation.
Me too. We're going to talk about technology fractionalization. Let me see. I had thought about saying it in a different way to make it a little, fragments of technology and how to put it all together. You actually specialize in that. So tell me a little bit about technology fragmentation and why it exists in our industry.
I can share kind of my thought on why it exists. I mean, part of it is the short-term rental industry is very highly entrepreneurial, right? Everyone kind of built their own businesses. And as such, a lot of the managers, operators are very open to trying new things and new solutions because they have a lot of issues that go on in the industry. Partly because of that, there's a nice, vibrant ecosystem where there's a problem, there are tech providers that create solutions that are geared towards solving those very specific problems. So that's a great ecosystem to live in because there's a lot of innovation that happens. However, what's happening is, on the one hand, PMSs are trying to absorb a lot of the functionality that these individual systems provide. So there's overlap. When a new technology comes on board, they need to kind of integrate with the main PMSs. So it's a very hard challenge to solve the overall problem because these companies have to choose which companies to integrate with and which ones they can't afford to integrate with yet. And so there's kind of a slew of, there are probably like 5-10 solutions for every problem. And, they kind of all overlap and mix. So on the one hand, I think it's a great thing that there's fragmentation. That means there's a lot of innovation going on in the industry. Of course, we do need, kind of the enterprise all-in-one type solutions as well. But I personally don't want to live in a world where Microsoft Office or Google Docs are the only two options that I have to run my business. I want to have the ability to have more innovation. And so that's kind of a high-level explanation of my thesis on why it exists. And so rather than talking about all-in-one versus best-in-class, which I think is typically the conversation, you can use all-in-one and still implement best-in-class on top of it, or, just pull together all the best-in-class and create a solution that works for you. And it really ends up becoming what works for your business. And the reason why that's important is because there is no, college degree on short-term rentals. So everyone built their businesses just the way they built their business. So what might make, a ton of sense for you and how you operate your business is going to be completely antithetical to the way I operate my business. So there's no way that one tech provider can anticipate all the different permutations of how people operate their businesses.
So how do you choose which solution is best for you? One of my pet peeves, to be quite frank, in this industry is that as property managers, we don't utilize all of the technology that we purchase. We purchase this technology and then we either don't implement it or it's so massive that we can't put everything in place at one time. And then we just go and we kind of hobble by until we have a problem that has to have a solution. And then we go, what do I do now? Mm-hmm. So how do you do that? How do you implement those pieces that you need that you already have and pay for?
Yeah. So even if you have a solution that has that feature set, it may or may not be the right implementation of that solution for you. So that's where an all-in-one might have to feature, check off but it actually might not be the right solution for you. So I think I've developed a way to kind of how do you select the right tech, right? And so PMS becomes like that first choice. So really, the way I suggest people to evaluate their tech choice, especially the PMS, first, it's not to go and ask 10 of your best friends or 10 of your mentors and ask them what they use and just, whatever more people tend to be using. That the popularity contest is not the way to choose technology.
Okay, I'm shocked. That's really interesting, but I love it. Tell me why.
Well, again, it's because one might work for their business and it might not work for yours. So the filtering process that we recommend is first and foremost, identify the key channels that you need to be on. So this is for the PMS, right? So obviously there's Airbnb, VRBO, Expedia, Booking.com. But if you have some niche channels that you really want or need to be on, those channels should be like very tightly integrated with the PMS that you are selecting. Because as great as channel managers are, those connections tend not to be as robust as the ones that are fully developed within the PMS itself. So if there's a channel that you really like, that's a core part of your business, your PMS really should be connected directly to that channel. So that's the first filter.
100% agree, guys. I hope you heard this. This is really important. First of all, if you use channel management, because not everybody does, but if you're using channel management to make money, make sure that your PMS is integrated. That's what he just said, right?
Yeah. Your core channels have to be like directly integrated into your PMS and not hobble that together with a separate channel manager because it's never going to be as robust. At least that's the experience that I've seen.
And that's money out the door. That's literally money down the drain if you don't do that, guys, because number one, your pricing is hugely important that it works properly, right, John?
Right, exactly.
And if you're not priced properly on those channels, you lose money. And the thing about those channels, just to break, because it's a very important part. I was speaking with somebody last month about this. If you don't price your channels properly for each specific channel, you will lose money because they charge you different things and you have to make a profit margin on each one for whatever that profit margin you want. So integrate with your PMS, guys, your channel management. What next do you stack on that, John?
Right. So that's the first filter. And that should eliminate some of the options that you're looking at, as long as you're not just looking for the basic, the big 3 or 4. The next is really identify what are the 3 to 4 key features and functionality that are really important to your business, right? So it can be trust accounting. It could be, I need a fully mobile app so that any one of my team members can operate wherever they are. It's going to be different for everyone, right? But really focus down to the key 3 or 4 features, functionality that are really important to you and your business. And then assess your PMS options across just those features. And don't follow that shiny object where they say, oh, we have this feature, that feature, that feature. Really assess it on the ones that you really need and make sure that it's fully implemented right now, not in Q2, not in Q3, but it's actually implemented.
I love that. Please, 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 here's something else, guys. Did you hear that? And the reason it's so important is because I have several clients right now who implemented PMSs based on promises, based on promised features for the future. And it's been 4 years and it still hasn't come to pass. So guys, do not implement based on the shiny object like John's talking about. I love that, John. That's really, really great advice.
So then the next thing is whatever you choose, there's going to be more features than the 3 or 4 that you had identified. Then you assess those features once you've selected and you've implemented the PMS and see if those features actually align with the way you want to run your business. If it does, you implement those features. If it doesn't, you really shouldn't have buyer's remorse on the fact that ancillary feature is not implemented the way that you need it. And that's when you can go shopping out for all the other, best in class software that are out there that might fill in that ancillary feature that you're looking for. So there is going to be overlap. And of course, you want to be very efficient and use all the features that your system has. But that feature set might not be correctly implemented for your business. And if that's the case, don't let that friction prevent you from finding the solution that works for your business. Does that make sense?
Yeah, don't change your business model based on the software. Your software should accommodate your business model. How important is communications when you're making a decision about a property management system? How important is it that all the communications you have, whether it's with housekeeping, whether it's with your guests, whether it's with your owners, how important is it that all that be in one place to find easily?
So definitely like the guest communication, like to the outside world, that should definitely be in a unified inbox, one place, so that regardless of what channel they came from, you're not searching through emails for direct booking and searching on your PMS for an OTA booking. So that should all be consolidated. With regard to your team, it would be great to have it in one place, but because, some cleaners might only use texting on their phone and may not have the technical capabilities to really implement a lot of the tech that you need them to. That's where, on the one hand, you want to be flexible. You don't want to limit your access to skill because they can't use your technology. But then internally on your operation side, you can figure out ways to bring text messages into, like a centralized Slack channel, for example, so that you're still communicating in a central location, but you're communicating by the means that your team members are comfortable communicating with. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I've noticed recently in the last 5 years is that using texting, making sure your text messages and your guest emails are all in one place for your guest. I think that was something that was really important to my clients when we were implementing, I think we were implementing Streamline in one of the Outer Banks clients. And putting that text messaging all in one place was like really cool that we could do that because we had all of our messages to our guests in one place to see them, whether it was by text or by email. And that's becoming more popular now.
Well, that's not only important so that you can find it. And right now, with the explosion of generative AI, by having that in one location, it actually becomes kind of that database so that you can start like understanding guest preferences, guest profiles, things of that nature, rather than having to cobble everything together, and then put it into one location.
That's a very good point. That's a very good point. So where do we go from there? So now we've identified our problems. We've identified what our PMS is based on the pieces that you put together there. Now where do we go?
So now you let your operations start telling you where to go, right? So you run with that tech, the tech stack that you have, and inevitably you're going to run into issues, problems on a repeated basis, right? There's going to be something that doesn't work. So there's going to be either something that consistently happens that your team's kind of on alert looking for, or there's going to be like one of your team members who's assigned to make sure that when this happens, jump in and make sure that, it gets fixed, right? That's a clear sign that there's probably a way to solve that problem. That's when you identify, okay, this is my urgent problem. That's a friction in my operations. And that's when you either look internally to the PMS that you already have and see if it can solve it, or you look externally for a best in class solution that can solve that problem, or a hybrid of the two, right? That best in class might work, but it's not yet integrated with your PMS. So how do you make those things talk to each other, right? So I'm a big fan of not trying to anticipate every problem that you're going to run into. But as you're operating, it'll show you, your operations will show you where your problems are, where your friction points are. And that's how you start. My motto is if you run into the same problem more than 2 times, then it's probably a sign that there's something wrong with the process. And there's probably a solution that either will eliminate it or reduce the likelihood of it happening. And that's kind of how you start picking out your tech stack.
I really like that. It's a really good advice because I think that rather than chasing down what problems I could possibly have, dealing with the problems as they come is not a bad idea.
Because there's so many moving parts in a short-term rental business, but most of those parts are very predictable. It's that combination. And so you don't know which part's going to break for your business versus somebody else's business. And that's why I say your business will tell you where your problems are. And if you're proactive about fixing those problems that you're seeing, then you're continually improving the operation of your business.
So I love that. I love that we're talking about business operation improvement. I usually talk about revenue, increasing revenue with tech.
That's also something what I love doing.
That's a shiny object I like to chase. That's for sure. So tell me, where do you think people leave most of their money on the table in tech? Is it by not using technology? Is it by not using all of the technology that they already have in their tech stack? Or is it by not chasing after technology that allows them to make money easier or more revenue? Because you're big on revenue management. Talk to me about this.
Yeah. So the answer to your question, I don't think it's one size fits all. I think there's some folks who aren't leveraging all the technology that they have available to them. There are some folks who refuse or don't want to implement technology that can really help. So on the direct revenue management side, there are dedicated revenue or dynamic pricing systems out there, whether it be Price Labs, Wheelhouse, RevMax. And I do hear often some operators saying, I know my market better than any algorithm or any computer can tell me. And I agree, you know your market, but then that with the knowledge and the data provided by these technologies can really, really help supercharge it. So I'm sure most of your listeners already have implemented some sort of dynamic pricing technology tool. But if they haven't, they really should, because that is one very low hanging fruit where you can add a lot to your revenue just by adding the technology and getting it set up reasonably well. And then we provide revenue management services using those tools. But if you're not outsourcing it, you really should have someone internal who really, they're really focused on making sure that they're pricing their properties at what the market will bear, as opposed to what your competition are doing.
Ready to rock your business? Join us at this year's Streamline Summit Rhythm in sunny Scottsdale, Arizona. This September 4th through the 6th, dive into an electrifying 3-day event filled with industry insights, networking, and hands-on training. From visionary speakers to the latest vacation rental tech trends, the Streamline Summit is your backstage pass to property management stardom. Kick off with our legendary opening party, take a swing at our charity golf tournament benefiting the Children's Cancer Network, and end on a high note with a closing bash you won't forget. You'll learn from industry rock stars like keynote speaker Amber Erickson Hurdle, a hospitality veteran and top 30 branding professional known for her high-energy talks on personal and business branding. And don't miss featured speaker Galen Emanuel, a world-class improviser and international speaker, transforming team dynamics with clients like Microsoft and NASA. Get your groove on with fellow professionals and amplify your success. Don't miss a beat. Visit streamlinesummit.com and snag your ticket today.
Let's move in that direction of revenue management and talk a little bit about what's happening today. In 2024, this summer season has really done a number on the booking window. On our booking window, historically, looking at year over year, talk to me a little bit about what's happening there, the things that you've seen.
Yeah, I mean, definitely 2024 is not 2022, right? So things are much slower. And so businesses need to really focus on their revenue first and foremost. Where during 2022, even if you didn't, you were making a lot of money. And so people weren't really focused on it. So that's number one. The other thing is the booking window is collapsing in lots of markets, and that's what the data is showing. One of the things that we're doing, actually, just looking at that data, we're not taking at face value that the booking window has collapsed, and therefore we're just going to wait until that booking window comes. Our thesis is in some of the markets, the operators are not adjusting their pricing adequately early enough. And because of that, travelers are not finding a good value until it's 14 days out or 7 days out, and that's when they're booking. So in some of our markets, we're actually trying to get bookings 21 days out, 30 days out that don't align with what the market is doing. And in a lot of the markets, that's been successful in terms of capturing the occupancy at a higher rate than we would have if we had waited until that booking window came, and then we had to try to be competitive with everybody else at that point in time. So that's one thing that we're highly in tune with, especially now as the markets are slowing down, is is it time to get out ahead and try to capture more occupancy a little bit further out than we historically had to, in 2021, 2022, where you could wait until the last minute and still get, top dollar.
Yeah, they're looking, guys, this year in 2024. The guest is looking for a deal. I mean, price, it's incredibly price sensitive. It's more price sensitive this year than it certainly has been the last couple of years. So we've seen that booking window really, really tighten up and be much smaller than it was earlier. What is the best advice, John, that you would give to property managers for revenue management? Are you saying that they should implement automated pricing, or are you suggesting that they should be looking at data and working their pricing based on that data they get?
Both is really what I'm saying. So the dynamic pricing engines are really they do help you ingest a lot of data that you otherwise would not have access to. So that's part of it. But the other part is, aside from everything else, it really is the consistency of making adjustments based on your experience, based on what you're seeing in the market, seeing what happens, the results of it, and on a consistent basis, having that feedback loop and making adjustments based on what that feedback loop is telling you. So it's kind of like driving, right? It's like eyes on the road, hands on the wheel, and making small little adjustments along the way, as opposed to, turning on a dynamic pricing engine, letting it go on its own for, weeks or months at a time, and then going in and saying, oh, what's going on? And then making drastic changes. So that iterative process on an ongoing basis is really an important part of revenue management.
What is the biggest mistake you think that people make in property management with either their tech stack or with their revenue management?
On the tech stack, I think trying to change for the sake of, fixing a problem. And that's what I'm guilty of. Changing PMSs more than 15 times, right? That's what I thought that perfect solution would somehow be out there, right? So
Yeah.
really understanding that if it's working for 70 to 80% of your operation, you probably should accept that and say, okay, how can I further reduce my drag in other ways, right? So I think that's really, don't always chase the shiny new object. Your current tech actually may be the right solution, and you might want to refine it to make it work for you.
Or add technology on top of it that exists if it doesn't have the functionality that you actually need to solve your problem.
Exactly. And then on the revenue side, I know this is going to sound somewhat like heresy, but of course, know your historic performance and know what has happened in the past, but don't let that blindside you into relying on that historic performance to say, okay, this year we're going to have the same and I want to get 10% more. So this is what we're going to do. Really, COVID has shown us, and since COVID, that looking forward, everything is changing so quickly and so dynamically that you really need to be nimble and be more flexible than what you've done in the past or what your market has done in the past, and make adjustments really quickly. And that's where that iterative process is important, because that allows you to make small adjustments quickly. And if that adjustment doesn't seem to be working the way you had anticipated, then you can make another small adjustment the other way. That's why that iterative process is very important.
Oh, I love that. That's true. So now I want you to tell me your favorite guest story of a guest that stayed with you as a property manager.
I don't know if I would say this is my favorite, but this was an interesting one. We had a guest who came and parked in the wrong spot, and their car got towed. And then, of course, they reached out to us because clearly it's our fault that their car got towed, right?
Yeah.
However, thinking of it more in terms of the hospitality side, we had one of our managers actually go with their car, drive the guest to where the car was taken so that they could pick up the car and go on with their vacation.
That's sweet.
So out of that bad situation, what we were able to do was, one, over deliver, right? And while the write-up was not a raving review, we did get a 5-star review, after that stay. There are times when you just kind of suck it up. It's not your fault, but you still assist, and you can get a good outcome out of that. We also gave them a gift certificate to a local restaurant, just as hey, you had a slightly bad experience. So here's something that, again, it wasn't our fault, but we just kind of did that. So that's a guest experience, I guess.
That's very cool. I'm going to ask you one last thing before we go. And you and I are not experts on AI, although we keep our fingers very close into the pie to see what's happening. Do you think AI is ready for prime time right now?
So there's a yes and a no, right? So the fact yes is AI has been with us for a long time, right? So if you look at Amazon and the way, they show you products that you've been following, it's all machine learning. So that kind of very narrow AI, or in dynamic pricing, all the data that's collected, that's been there all along. So we've been using it, right? We just haven't, the term AI was kind of more foreign while we've been implementing it. So in the ways that it's been being used, I think, yes, it's ready. I think all the excitement about generative AI right now, ChatGPT and all that, any technology, when it first pops up, everyone's like, wow, this is amazing. And then people start seeing, okay, this isn't actually working the way it needs to, right? So I think there's still a ways to go, at least what the public sees, what people like you and I see in terms of where generative AI is going. Call me an old fart, but I would not trust a generative AI agent to run my short-term rental business, even just the guest communication side. With that said, there are opportunities to leverage it so that it definitely reduces the human resources required so that people can be focusing on more complex issues rather than answering the same question over and over again. So again, I'm kind of an old fart, but I'm cautiously excited about everything that's coming. But I'm also not jumping in and throwing everything onto it at this point.
I'm really excited about where we're going with the website piece of it, where it's gathering all the data from the visitors that are coming and serving up different content to them based on what they're doing, similar to what you just talked about with Amazon and what it's been doing. So I'm really, really excited about what that can do for a website if it's implemented properly, but I don't think we're there yet either. So I don't quite think it's ready for prime time. I think those algorithms that we've been using, like you're talking about before generative AI, I think that's great. But I'm excited to see next year where we are with it.
Yeah, it's developing so quickly. And I'm sure what I'm saying right now, all the solutions are already out there, just not available to the general public. So yeah, it's the rate of advancement is just mind-boggling.
So if people want to get in touch with you to talk about their tech stack, John, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
I'm fairly active on LinkedIn. So they can find me on LinkedIn, John on TechTape or something like that, and you should be able to find me. They can always email me. It's my name, john.an@gettechtape.com. And generally speaking, I make my calendar available for a quick 30-minute call to talk about revenue management or talk about tech stack. And so happy to have those conversations.
The other thing I want to say before we go is I want to thank you for all the work you've done for Hawaii and the advocacy there. That's huge because we know what difficult times it's been in the last few years with them. So you've been instrumental there. And I know there are a lot of people that are grateful for the work that you've done.
Well, there have been times when I spent more time on the advocacy than on my businesses.
I'm sure.
But we have a great crew now out in, local residents who are taking up the challenge. And so we have a statewide organization now. And with some recent bills that's passed, we're looking to see how we can be effective in advocating for our industry. So
I'm sure there are a lot of people that would like to follow that and be able to do the same thing that you've done there in Hawaii. Well, thanks again for coming. Is there anything else you want to tell everybody before we go?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. This was a great conversation, had a lot of fun. And, I know things are slowing down. So some people think that the short-term rental industry is collapsing. I am very gung-ho about the industry and it's actually maturing and professionalizing. And so I'm in it for the long haul. And I hope a lot of the other folks stay that way as well.
Yeah, don't get discouraged, guys. Next year will be interesting to see what happens. So thanks again. And guys, we'll see you next time.
This episode of How We Grow is brought to you by Streamline. To find out more about how Streamline can help grow your vacation rental business, visit streamlinevrs.com.
Make sure to search for How We Grow in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts, or anywhere else podcasts are found, and hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. On behalf of the team here at Inhabit, thanks for listening.